The paw clawed forward. Just one. Then another. Each movement carved a crimson line through virgin snow. Highway 93, north, stretched empty into the Montana darkness. 5:30 p.m., but the January blizzard made it feel like midnight. 15 below zero. Wind cutting like broken glass. The German shepherd's hind legs dragged uselessly behind him, shattered bones grinding with every desperate pull forward. His breath came in white clouds, each one weaker than the last. Amber eyes searched the road through the driving snow. Headlights appeared. The dog tried to lift his head. The car slowed, brake lights glowing red in the storm, then accelerated past. 47th car that hour. The shepherd collapsed into the snow, blood pooling dark against white, his body temperature dropping, minutes maybe before hypothermia took him. Then, another set of headlights pierced the blizzard. Number 48. The brake lights flared. This time they stayed red. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Benjamin Carter's hands gripped the steering wheel like a lifeline. 58 years old, and tonight he'd driven this exact stretch of Highway 93 for the 730th time since Mary died. He counted. That's what you did when you had nothing else to hold on to. You counted days, miles, memories that hurt too much to forget. The Ford pickup's headlights caught movement in the snow. Something dark against white. Something struggling. Ben's foot hovered between gas and brake. 2 years ago, Mary had died on this road. Not this exact spot, 3 miles back, but close enough that every trip home felt like driving through a graveyard. February 15th, 2023. The date lived in his bones now, sharp as the Montana winter. He'd been a mechanic in the Army for 20 years. Not combat, just maintenance, keeping things running, fixing what broke. After retirement, he'd moved to Missoula with Mary, bought the cabin she'd always wanted. Then cancer came. Then the car accident on her way to that final chemotherapy appointment. Then silence, the kind that echoed. His daughter Sarah lived in Seattle now. They'd spoken 47 seconds 3 weeks ago. He counted that too. The shape in the snow moved again, a dragging, broken motion that made Ben's chest tighten. He pressed the brake. The truck slowed, tires crunching over packed ice, stopped 20 feet past whatever it was. Through the rearview mirror, he watched it crawl. Not it. Him. A dog. German shepherd, maybe. Big. The kind that should be powerful, graceful. This one dragged its back half like a corpse. Ben's breath fogged the windshield. He'd learned to walk away from pain. After Mary, walking away was survival. The cabin waited, microwave dinner, television noise to fill the quiet. Mary's picture on the nightstand that he still said goodnight to like a fool. But the dog kept moving. 2 front paws clawing forward, hind legs trailing, the snow behind him painted red. Ben shifted into reverse. The German shepherd's head lifted when the truck's backup lights illuminated him. Amber eyes. Intelligent, desperate, pleading. His coat, black and tan under the grime and blood, was matted against his ribs, too thin. Shaking from cold or pain or both. A scar twisted across his muzzle, old and healed wrong. When their eyes met through the windshield, something in Ben's chest cracked. Not broke. Already broken. This was different. This was something frozen beginning to thaw. He put the truck in park and reached for the door handle. His left hand, the one with the scar hidden under his glove, the one that still remembered what it felt like to kill something innocent 30 years ago, trembled. God help us both, Ben whispered, and stepped out into the storm. The wind hit Ben like a fist when he opened the truck door. 15 below zero felt closer to 30 with the wind chill. Snow stung his face, stuck to his silver beard. His army jacket, the one Mary had loved because she said it made him look distinguished, did little against the cold. The dog watched him approach, not with hope, with terror. Ben stopped 10 feet away and knelt in the snow. His knees protested. 58 wasn't old, but it wasn't young either, and 2 months of sleeping in chairs and skipping meals had aged him. The cold bit through his jeans immediately. "Easy," Ben said, voice rough from disuse. "Easy, boy." The shepherd tried to crawl backward. His front legs scrabbled against ice, but the broken back half dragged uselessly. A sound came from his throat. Not a growl, not quite a whimper. Something worse. The sound of something that had given up barking because barking only brought pain. Ben's hand shook as he pulled off his gloves. The scar on his left hand stood out white against weathered skin. He kept his palms down, non-threatening, and stayed motionless. "I know," Ben whispered. "I know you're scared. I know it hurts." The dog's amber eyes tracked every movement. His whole body trembled. Cold, shock, fear braided together. The snow around him was stained dark. Too much blood. Ben had seen enough injuries in the army to know this dog was dying. "I'm not going to hurt you." The words caught in Ben's throat. 30 years ago, he'd said something similar to another dog. Then he'd gotten drunk and angry, and that dog had died screaming in a parking lot while his wife watched in horror. The memory lived in his hands, in the scar tissue, in the nightmares that still woke him. 20 minutes passed. Ben talked about nothing, the weather, the grocery store, how the Broncos were doing, how Mary used to make hot chocolate with real cream. His voice became a rhythm, steady and low. The dog's breathing slowed. Not calmer, just weaker. Finally, Ben pulled off his jacket. The cold immediately knifed through his flannel shirt, but he folded the jacket and placed it between them. The shepherd's nostrils flared, catching the scent. Motor oil. Old coffee. The ghost of Mary's perfume that Ben couldn't wash out and wouldn't try. "Just let me help you," Ben said. The dog's eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, something had shifted. Not trust. Not quite. But maybe the beginning of surrender. Ben inched forward. The shepherd didn't retreat. Ben's hand touched matted fur, and the dog flinched, but didn't pull away. Ben felt the rapid heartbeat beneath his palm, felt the broken body trying so hard to keep living. "You're okay now," Ben lied, because sometimes lies were kinder than truth. "I've got you." Lifting 85 pounds of dead weight while kneeling in snow should have been impossible. Ben's back screamed as he stood, the dog wrapped in his jacket. The shepherd let out a sound that would haunt Ben's dreams, a scream, high and sharp, all the pain he'd been too afraid to voice before. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," Ben chanted, carrying him to the truck. The dog's head lolled against Ben's chest. His breathing had gone shallow. Ben settled him on the passenger seat as gently as possible, cranked the heat to maximum. The dog's eyes found his again. In them, Ben saw something he recognized, the look of someone who'd stopped believing rescue was possible. "Montana Veterinary Hospital is 15 miles, Ben said, putting the truck in gear. "You stay with me, you hear? You stay." He kept one hand on the dog's head as he drove. Under his palm, he felt the trembling, the labored breathing, the fading warmth. Highway 93 stretched ahead through the blizzard. Ben drove faster than was safe, slower than he wanted, praying to a God he hadn't spoken to since Mary's funeral. The dog's eyes stayed locked on his face, desperate, pleading, trusting him with the last thing he had left to give. Ben had forgotten what it felt like to matter to something. The weight of that amber gaze was almost too much to bear. "Don't you die on me," he whispered. "Not tonight. Please, not tonight." Montana Veterinary Hospital sat on the edge of Missoula, a low brick building with lights still burning in the emergency wing. Ben carried the dog through automatic doors that hissed open, bringing cold air and the smell of blood into the antiseptic warmth. The woman at the front desk looked up and went pale. "Oh, my God." "He needs help," Ben said. Obvious. Stupid. But words were hard when your arms were full of dying animal and your jacket was soaked with blood that wasn't yours. She was already reaching for the phone. "Rachel, emergency, now." A woman in scrubs burst through the inner doors 30 seconds later. Young, maybe 30, with kind eyes that went hard when she saw the dog. "Bring him back." Ben followed her into an examination room. Fluorescent lights made everything too bright, too real. He laid the dog on the metal table as gently as he could. The shepherd's eyes tracked him, terrified of being left. "Stay with me, sir," Rachel said, pulling on gloves. "I need information. How long ago did this happen?" "I don't know. Found him on Highway 93 about 30 minutes ago. He'd been dragging himself. Blood trail went back maybe 2 miles. Rachel's hands moved over the dog with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, assessing damage. Her face revealed nothing, but her jaw tightened. Temperature's 32 Celsius. That's critical hypothermia. Blood pressure's 60/40. He's in shock. She started an IV line with movement so smooth the dog barely flinched. "Dr. Thompson's on her way. Is he going to make it?" Rachel looked at him then, really looked. Whatever she saw in Ben's face made her voice softer. "I don't know, but we'll try." She draped heating blankets over the dog, adjusted the IV drip. The shepherd's breathing had gone shallow, rapid. His eyes kept closing, then snapping open like he was fighting sleep, because sleep meant death. The door opened. A woman in her early 40s entered, dark hair pulled back, exhaustion evident in the lines around her eyes. She took one look at the dog and her expression shifted from tired to focused. "Dr. Emily Thompson," she said, washing her hands. "Tell me everything." Ben repeated his story. Highway 93, the crawling, the blood. Emily examined the dog while he talked, her hands gentle but thorough. When she touched the scar on his muzzle, Ben saw her hand tremble. Just once. Then it was steady again. "We need X-rays," she said. "Rachel, prep radiology." "Sir, what's your name?" "Benjamin Carter." "Ben." "Mr. Carter, are you the owner?" "No. I just found him." Emily nodded, still examining. Her fingers found something on the dog's neck, and she went very still. "Rachel, look at this." Rachel leaned in. Both women's faces hardened. "What?" Ben asked. "Burn marks," Emily said quietly. "Old ones, consistent with a shock collar used repeatedly. And look here." She indicated the dog's ribs. "These scars are from fighting, dog fighting." The words hit Ben like a punch. Someone did this to him, on purpose? "We'll need X-rays to confirm, but yes, this isn't an accident, Mr. Carter. This is abuse. 20 minutes later, Ben stood in a dark room staring at ghostly images on a computer screen. Emily pointed to breaks and fractures with clinical precision, but her voice carried an edge of controlled fury. Both femurs fractured. The left is compound. Bone broke through skin. The right is a spiral fracture, which indicates twisting force. Pelvic fracture here, through the ilium. 3 ribs broken on the left side. Ben's stomach turned. Can you fix it? There's more. Emily zoomed in on different areas. See these? Old fractures. These ribs broke before and healed badly. And here, she indicated small white spots. Pellets. Looks like BB gun ammunition. And the bone density shows stress fractures throughout his skeleton. Mr. Carter, this dog has been systematically tortured. The room spun. Ben gripped the edge of the desk. In his mind, he saw another dog, heard its screams, felt the weight of what his hands had done 30 years ago, when rage and alcohol had drowned out everything human in him. How much? His voice came out hoarse. Emily turned to face him. Surgery will be around $8,000. Hospital stay, minimum 10 days, another $3,000. Medications, physical therapy, potential follow-up surgeries, we're looking at $15,000 to $18,000 total. $18,000. Ben had $18,247 in savings, Mary's life insurance payout, everything he had in the world. What are my options? Emily's face softened with sympathy. Option 1, surgery. High risk, high cost, uncertain outcome. His survival rate is maybe 15 to 20%. Even if he survives, he may never walk again. Option 2, she paused. Euthanasia. It's humane, immediate, and costs $200. Ben looked at the dog through the window. The shepherd was watching the door, waiting for him to come back. Still trusting despite every reason not to. What would you do? Ben asked. I can't make this decision for you, Mr. Carter. But I will tell you. I've been a veterinarian for 18 years. I've never seen a dog fight this hard to live. Ben's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, his daughter. First one in 3 weeks. Saw you on the local news. Dad, that's your retirement money. Be smart. Smart would be walking away. Smart would be protecting his future, keeping what little security he had left. Smart would be remembering that he was a 58-year-old man with a bad back and a broken heart who couldn't even take care of himself, let alone a dog that might never walk again. Ben thought about Mary's last words. Promise me you'll keep living. He wasn't sure what living meant anymore, but he knew what dying looked like. He'd seen it in the mirror every morning for 2 years. He'd seen it in that dog's eyes on the highway. And he'd seen something else there too. Something he'd lost and forgotten how to find. Do the surgery, Ben said. Mr. Carter, I need you to understand the risks. I understand. Do it. Emily studied his face, then nodded. We need a 50% deposit before we can proceed. $7,500. The banks are closed, but we can take credit card. I'll get cash. Ben checked his watch. 6:45. How long do I have? Mr. Carter, I can't start surgery until... How long until he can't wait anymore? Emily glanced at the vitals monitor. 2 hours, maybe 3. I'll be back. Ben ran. The ATM outside First National Bank spit out $500 in 20s. Daily withdrawal limit. Ben stared at the remaining balance on the screen. $17,747. He pocketed the cash and ran to his truck. Eddie's pawn shop sat 3 blocks away, a grimy storefront with barred windows and a neon sign that buzzed in the darkness. Ben pushed through the door at 7:05. The proprietor, a heavy-set man with tattooed forearms, looked up from his phone. "We close at 8, he said. Ben pulled Mary's watch from his wrist. His hands shook as he placed it on the counter, stainless steel with a leather band engraved on the back. "To my Benjamin, with 20 years of love, Mary." "How much?" Eddie picked it up, turned it over, read the inscription. 200. "It's worth 2,000. "Not to me." Eddie set it down. 250, final offer. Ben closed his eyes, opened them. Done. The next stop, Henderson Hardware, where Ben worked part-time stocking shelves for minimum wage. His boss, Tom Wilson, was closing out the register when Ben burst in at 7:25. "Ben, what's wrong?" "Tom, I need an advance on my paycheck. Whatever you can spare." Tom's weathered face creased with concern. "How much do you need?" "Everything." Tom opened the register without another word and pulled out $300. "This is all the cash I've got. Don't worry about paying it back right away." "Tom, I can't." "Yes, you can. Mary was good people, so are you. Now get going, you look like hell." 7:50. Ben's cabin was a 15-minute drive. He pushed the truck to 70 on icy roads, fishtailing twice. Inside, he went straight to Mary's jewelry box on the dresser. His hands hovered over her wedding ring. The one thing he'd kept, the one thing he couldn't bear to part with. Beneath it lay an anniversary necklace. White gold, small diamonds, nothing extravagant, but Mary had worn it every day for 10 years. Ben grabbed it and ran. He made it back to Eddie's pawn shop at 7:58. Eddie was locking the door. "Please," Ben pounded on the glass. "Please, I need 2 minutes." Eddie saw the desperation and unlocked the door. The necklace bought $1,200. Ben didn't negotiate. 8:15. Ben walked back into Montana Veterinary Hospital with $2,650 in cash, breathing hard. His shirt soaked with sweat despite the cold. Rachel looked up from the desk, her eyes widening. "Mr. Carter, we weren't sure you'd—" "I have $2,650, Ben gasped. "I need more time for the rest." Rachel glanced at her computer screen, then at him. "Mr. Carter, sit down. You need to see something." She turned the monitor toward him. A GoFundMe page filled the screen, the title reading, "Help Save Highway 93 Dog." Below it, a grainy cell phone photo. His truck, red brake lights in the snow, taken by someone who'd driven past after he stopped. The donation counter read $4,850. Ben's vision blurred. "I don't understand." The story went local. 47 cars passed by that dog before you stopped. Someone posted about it online. The whole town's been calling. Combined with his cash, they had exactly $7,500. "We can start surgery now," Rachel said softly. Ben made it to the bathroom before he broke down. 30 years of tears he'd been holding in since the night he killed his family's dog, since Mary's funeral, since every morning he'd woken up alone. He cried until his chest hurt and his throat was raw, then washed his face and went to find Dr. Thompson. She was scrubbing her hands in preparation, already in surgical garb. "Mr. Carter, we're ready to begin. This will take approximately 4 hours. There's a waiting room. I'm staying." Emily looked at him, really looked. "There's a chair outside the operating room. You can wait there." The surgery began at 9 p.m. Through a window, Ben could see Emily and 2 assistants working over the dog. The shepherd was unconscious, intubated, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. Emily's hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Ben noticed they trembled slightly whenever she paused. Hour 1. Rachel brought Ben coffee he didn't drink. The waiting room was empty except for him and the hum of fluorescent lights. On the TV in the corner, a local news anchor was talking about him, about the dog, about 47 cars that didn't stop. They'd pulled his Army service record somehow, found his address. Ben ignored it. Hour 2. Through the window, Ben saw Emily working on the dog's left leg. She'd made an incision down the femur, and even through the glass, Ben could see blood. Too much blood. An alarm started beeping. Rachel rushed in with bags of blood, hooking them to the IV. The dog's vital signs stabilized. Hour 3. Emily was closing one leg and starting on the other when every alarm in the operating room started screaming at once. The heart monitor showed an irregular rhythm, spiking and dropping. Ben stood, pressed against the glass. Emily's hands moved frantically. She shouted something. A nurse grabbed a crash cart. The monitor went flat, a single endless tone. Ben's knees gave out. He collapsed against the door, the sound of that flat line drilling into his skull. It was Mary's hospital room all over again, the same sound, the same helplessness. He'd been deployed when his first dog died. He'd been at work when Mary's car crashed. He was always somewhere else when the things he loved stopped breathing. Not this time. This time he was here, watching. Emily placed defibrillator paddles on the dog's chest. "Clear!" The body jolted. The line stayed flat. "Charge to 100." Another jolt. Nothing. 150, Ben was praying. The words came without thought. Muscle memory from a childhood in a Baptist church in Alabama. "Please, God, please, not this one. Let me save this one." The third shock made the dog's body arch. The monitor beeped once, twice. A rhythm emerged, irregular, but there. Emily stepped back, her whole body shaking. Rachel said something Ben couldn't hear. Emily nodded, and they went back to work. Ben slid down the wall and sat on the floor, his face in his hands. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, machines beeped and monitors glowed, and a broken dog fought to stay alive. Hour 4. Emily was closing the final incision when Ben finally stood. His legs had gone numb from sitting. Through the window, he watched her place the last suture. 47 stitches down the dog's spine and legs. Rachel had counted them aloud. At 1:15 a.m., Emily emerged from the operating room. Her scrubs were spattered with blood. Her eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. She pulled her surgical mask down. "He made it through surgery," she said. Ben waited for the rest. "The next 48 hours are critical. If he survives that, we'll know more. Mr. Carter, you need to go home. Get some sleep." "I'm staying." Emily looked like she wanted to argue, then didn't. "There's a cot in the family room. Rachel will show you." Ben shook his head. "I'll stay here." He gestured to the chairs outside the recovery room. At 8 a.m., Ben woke to Rachel touching his shoulder. His neck screamed from sleeping upright in a plastic chair. "Mr. Carter, he's awake." The dog lay in a cage in the recovery room, wrapped in warming blankets. His eyes were open, glassy with pain medication. When Ben approached, those amber eyes focused on him. The tail, just the very tip, moved. Once. Ben's throat closed. He knelt beside the cage and carefully placed his hand near the dog's head. The shepherd shifted, pressed his muzzle against Ben's palm. It was the smallest movement, took all his strength, but it was deliberate, intentional. "Hey there, buddy," Ben whispered. "You made it. You're okay." The lie felt less like a lie this time. Maybe they'd both be okay. Maybe. By noon, the dog's temperature had risen to 37 degrees. Normal. His vitals were weak, but stable. Emily checked on him every hour, adjusting medications, monitoring the IV. She still said nothing about her trembling hands whenever she touched the old scar on his muzzle. Day 2 brought fever. At 6 a.m., Rachel called Ben at his cabin. "You need to come in, now." The dog's temperature had spiked to 40 degrees Celsius. His surgical wounds were red, angry, possibly infected. Emily was already prepping antibiotics when Ben arrived. "Sepsis?" Ben asked. He'd learned the word in the Army. "Maybe. We're treating aggressively, but if the infection spreads—" Emily didn't finish. She didn't need to. Amputation, or worse. Ben spent the day in that chair, watching nurses change bandages, administer medications, monitor vitals. The dog drifted in and out of consciousness, whimpering in his sleep. When he woke, his eyes found Ben immediately, desperate and afraid. That night, Ben's phone rang. Sarah. He'd been ignoring her calls, her texts telling him to be smart, to think about his future, to stop being reckless. He answered. "Dad, I saw the news story." "Sarah, not now." "Dad, that's your retirement money, all of it." "I know what it is." "Do you? That was supposed to take care of you. Mom would have wanted—" She stopped. "What would Mom have wanted, Sarah? Tell me." "You knew her better than anyone." Silence on the line. Then, "I'm wiring you $2,000. Someone in this family needs to be responsible." The bitterness in her voice cut deeper than her words. Something was wrong. Something beyond this, beyond the dog, beyond the money. But Sarah hung up before Ben could ask. Day 3. The fever broke. The dog's temperature dropped to 38.5, then 38, then 37.5. By evening, he was alert enough to lift his head. Rachel brought him food, soft, bland, veterinary recommended. The dog stared at the bowl like it was poison. "He won't eat," Rachel said. This is common in abuse cases. They learn to associate food with pain. Ben watched for 20 minutes. The dog's ribs showed. He was starving, but he wouldn't touch the food. An idea formed. Ben asked Rachel for a piece of chicken. She brought him a small chunk. Ben ate it himself, chewing slowly, making sure the dog watched. Then he picked up another piece and offered it. The dog's nostrils flared, confusion in his eyes. Ben ate another piece, offered another. After 30 minutes, the dog finally took the food from Ben's hand. Just one piece, then another, then he ate from the bowl. It was the first meal he'd had in 6 days. By day 5, the dog was watching everything with those intelligent eyes. Fear responses were obvious now. He flinched when men approached. Male doctors, male nurses, even male visitors in the hallway made him cower. But women could touch him. Rachel could change his bandages without him panicking. Day 7. A physical therapist introduced herself, Dr. Lisa Chen, specializing in animal rehabilitation. She brought a sling system to help support the dog's weight. They tried to get him to stand. His legs wouldn't hold him. He collapsed immediately, whimpering in frustration and pain. Ben watched the light go out of those amber eyes, watched hope die, and felt something in his own chest break all over again. "It's too soon," Emily said. "Give it time." But time was something they might not have. That evening, Rachel was reviewing security footage from the parking lot, hospital policy after the surgery. She called Ben over to her computer. "Mr. Carter, you need to see this." The timestamp read 9:30 p.m., day 6. A figure stood in the parking lot, hood up, face obscured, watching the hospital, watching the window to the recovery room where the dog lay. After 10 minutes, the figure left. "Has this happened before?" Ben asked. "3 times this week, different nights, always between 9 and 10 p.m. "Did you call the police?" "They said without a crime committed, they can't do anything." Rachel's face was troubled. "But Mr. Carter, there's something else." She pulled up the dog's microchip records on her computer. "I scanned his chip the night you brought him in. It's registered to someone named Marcus Thornton here in Missoula. I tried calling the number on file. Disconnected. So I did some digging." She pulled up a news article. The headline read, "Former police officer terminated for excessive force." The photo showed a large man, 6'3", with cold eyes and a scar across his knuckles. Marcus Thornton, fired from Missoula PD in 2020, currently owns Thornton's Auto Repair on Industrial Drive. And look at this. She clicked to another page, reviews of his business. Buried in the comments, "Does dog training on the side. Tough methods but effective." Ben stared at the photo. This was the man who'd tortured the dog. This was the man who'd dumped him on Highway 93 to die. And now he was watching the hospital. "I'm staying overnight," Ben said. Emily overheard. "Mr. Carter, that's not necessary." "It is." Ben's voice carried an edge it hadn't had in years, something military, something that remembered how to protect. "If he comes back, I'll be here." On day 9, Ben gave the dog a name. He'd been calling him buddy, boy, friend, but the dog needed an identity, needed to be someone, not just something broken. Ben thought about his first dog in the Army, a German shepherd named Ranger, killed in action saving Ben's unit from a hidden explosive 25 years ago, but Ben still remembered those amber eyes, that unwavering loyalty. "How about Ranger?" Ben asked the dog. The shepherd's ears perked up. His tail wagged. Just once, but it was deliberate. "Ranger it is." That night, Ranger placed his head on Ben's lap for the first time. It was voluntary, trusting, the simple act of a dog seeking comfort. Ben sat frozen for 10 minutes, afraid to move, afraid to break the spell. When he finally touched Ranger's head, tears rolled down his face and dripped onto the dog's fur. Rachel found them like that and took a photo. By morning, it had gone viral. The image of a silver-haired man crying over a scarred German shepherd touched something raw in people. Donations poured in. The GoFundMe hit $47,000, $1,000 for each car that had passed by. On day 10, Lisa Chen returned for a full assessment. She scanned Ranger's microchip again, cross-referencing databases. Her face went pale. "Dr. Thompson," she said quietly, "this dog isn't just any German shepherd." Emily looked up from her charts. "What do you mean?" Lisa pulled up a military database on her tablet. K9 2847 USMC. He's a retired military working dog, Marines. His handler was, she scrolled, Sergeant David Mitchell, killed in action, Afghanistan, 2021. The room went silent. Ben stared at the dog, at Ranger, seeing him differently now. A war hero, a veteran, someone who'd saved lives and lost his handler and been betrayed by the system meant to protect him. "How did he end up with an abuser?" Emily's voice was tight. Military working dogs are supposed to be adopted by their handler's family. If there's no family, they enter an adoption lottery. Marcus Thornton must have falsified records. Former cop would know how. By afternoon, the story had exploded. National news picked it up. War hero dog abandoned after handler's death. Veterans groups mobilized. The GoFundMe tripled overnight. Missoula rallied around Ranger like he was their own. Ben's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. He ignored them all. This wasn't about publicity. This was about a broken dog who'd served his country and been thrown away like trash. Sarah called again. Her voice sounded different this time. Less angry, more sad. "Dad, I saw the new reports. He's a military dog." "Yeah, like your Ranger, the one you told me about when I was little." Ben had forgotten telling Sarah those stories. "Yeah, like him." "Dad, She paused. "I need to tell you something, but not over the phone. I'm coming home." "Sarah, you don't need to." "I'm coming. I'll be there tomorrow." She hung up. Ben stared at his phone, confused and worried. Sarah hadn't been home in 2 years. Week 2 began with physical therapy. Lisa set up an underwater treadmill, explaining that the water would reduce weight-bearing stress on Ranger's legs. Getting him into the tank was a 2-hour ordeal. He was terrified of water, a new fear they hadn't anticipated. Ben climbed into the warm water fully clothed. Ranger clung to him, trembling. Lisa was patient, moving slowly, letting Ranger adjust. Finally, with Ben holding him, Ranger took 3 steps on the underwater treadmill. 3 steps. Then exhaustion. But it was progress. By day 14, Ranger could walk 10 steps underwater. By day 16, he supported his weight for 30 seconds on land before collapsing. By day 17, he took his first unsupported step on solid ground. It lasted 2 seconds before his legs gave out. But Ben saw something in Ranger's eyes he hadn't seen before. Determination. Fight. The dog who'd crawled 2 miles through snow hadn't given up. He was just getting started. That night, the figure returned to the parking lot. Ben was waiting. He walked outside, stood under the security lights where he could be seen. The figure stayed in the shadows. "I know who you are," Ben called across the parking lot. "Marcus Thornton. Come back here again and I'll make sure every news outlet in the country knows your name." The figure didn't move for a long moment. Then a voice carried across the distance, rough and cold. "That dog belongs to me." "Not anymore. He's defective, weak. I should have put him down myself." Ben's fists clenched. "Get off this property. You're making a mistake, old man. That dog will never be worth what you're spending. He's worth more than you'll ever be." The figure left. But Ben knew he'd be back. Men like Marcus Thornton didn't give up. They came back harder, angrier, more dangerous. Ben had known men like that in the Army. Hell, he'd been one once, 30 years ago. He went back inside and sat beside Ranger's cage. The dog was awake, watching him with those knowing eyes. "I'm not going to let him hurt you again," Ben whispered. "I promise. Whatever it takes." Ranger's tail thumped once against the blankets. In that moment, Ben realized something terrifying. He'd die for this dog. He'd known him less than 3 weeks, and he'd die for him without hesitation. Maybe that's what living felt like. Maybe Mary had been right. Maybe you just had to keep going until you found something worth staying for. Sarah arrived at 11 a.m. on a gray Thursday, driving a rental car from the Missoula airport. Ben met her in the hospital parking lot, shocked by how thin she'd gotten. His daughter looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her clothes hung loose. "Sarah?" "Not here," she said. "Can we go somewhere private?" They sat in a small conference room the hospital used for difficult conversations, the kind where doctors told families there was nothing more they could do. Sarah twisted her hands in her lap, unable to meet Ben's eyes. "I've been lying to you for 2 years," she said finally. "About why I left. About why I haven't visited. About everything." Ben waited. After Mary died, he'd learned patience was sometimes the only thing you could offer. "Mom didn't die alone in that car accident," Sarah's voice broke. "I was driving. I was taking her to her last chemo appointment." The words hit Ben like a physical blow. "What?" "We were talking. She was telling me things. About you, about when I was little, about—" Sarah's breath hitched. "About that dog. The one you killed when I was a baby. She told me what really happened." Ben's blood went cold. Mary had promised never to tell Sarah. They'd agreed the past should stay buried. "We started arguing. About you. About whether I should forgive you for something I didn't even remember. I was angry, Dad. So angry that you'd done something like that and never told me. I wasn't watching the road. There was ice." Sarah was crying now, harsh sobs that shook her whole body. "I hit a tree. Mom's side took the impact. Internal injuries. She died 3 hours later at the hospital. It was my fault. I killed her." Ben crossed the room and pulled Sarah into his arms. She fought him at first, then collapsed against his chest, crying harder than he'd ever seen. "It wasn't your fault," he whispered into her hair. "You don't understand. Mary's cancer was terminal. The doctors gave her weeks, maybe a month. The accident, Sarah, it might have been mercy." Sarah pulled back, her face blotchy and red. "There's more. God, there's so much more." She told him about the infertility. 3 rounds of IVF, each one failing, each one costing $15,000, $45,000 total. Her savings wiped out. Her marriage ending because her husband wanted biological children and she couldn't give them to him. Moving to Seattle to escape the failure, the guilt, the pitying looks. "When I saw you spending $15,000 on a dog," her voice turned bitter, "I was so angry. You'd spend that on a stranger's dog, but you never offered to help me. Never even asked why my marriage fell apart or why I needed money. You were so buried in your grief you didn't see I was drowning too." Ben felt like he'd been gutted. "Sarah, I didn't know. You never said—" "I couldn't. How could I tell you I killed Mom and then ask you for money? How could I face you knowing what I'd done?" She wiped her eyes roughly. "And then I realized, you didn't know about the IVF because I never told you. I was so busy being angry at you for not reading my mind that I never actually asked for help." They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside the window, snow had started falling again, soft and quiet. "I'm sorry," Ben said finally. "For the dog 30 years ago. For being so lost after Mary died that I couldn't see you needed me. For all of it. I'm sorry, too. For blaming you. For staying away." Sarah took a shaky breath. "Can I meet him? Ranger?" Ben led her to the recovery room. Ranger was awake, alert, watching them approach. When he saw Sarah, his ears went back slightly, wary but not terrified. Progress. Sarah knelt beside his cage slowly. "Hey there, Ranger." The dog studied her, then did something unexpected. He moved forward, awkward, painful, but deliberate, and placed his head against the cage bars nearest to Sarah. She reached through carefully, touched his scarred muzzle, and started crying again. "He's been through so much," she whispered. "So have you," Ben said. "So have we all." Ranger licked Sarah's hand through the bars. In that moment, something shifted. Ben saw his daughter's face soften, saw some of the pain ease. Maybe that's what healing looked like. Not forgetting, not even forgiving entirely, just moving forward together. The peace lasted 3 hours. Ben's nephew Michael arrived at 2 p.m. with a laptop and footage that made Ben's blood run cold. Michael was 28, a wildlife photographer who'd been documenting Ranger's recovery for a potential documentary. He'd also been investigating Marcus Thornton. "Uncle Ben, I followed him last night," Michael said, pulling up video files. "He drove to an abandoned property 15 miles outside town. I got this from 300 yards away with my telephoto lens." The footage showed Marcus unloading bags of dog food from his truck. In the background, a dilapidated barn. And sounds. Barking, multiple dogs, desperate and afraid. "There are more dogs," Michael said. "I counted at least 9 different barks. He's hiding them." Ben called Officer Linda Hayes, one of the few cops who'd taken his initial complaint about Marcus seriously. She arrived within the hour, reviewed the footage, and made calls. By 4 p.m., they had a warrant. The raid happened at 6 p.m. Ben wasn't supposed to be there, but he followed the police convoy in his truck. Sarah came with him, neither of them speaking, both knowing they needed to see this through. The barn sat on 5 acres of overgrown property, the nearest neighbor half a mile away. Perfect isolation for what Marcus had been doing. Police surrounded the building. Animal control waited with transport cages. Emily had come too, prepared for whatever they'd find. When they breached the door, the smell hit first. Waste, blood, infection, fear. The barking was deafening. 9 dogs in cages barely large enough to turn around. German shepherds, Rottweilers, pit bulls. Fighting breeds, all of them scarred, starving, terrified. Emily and her team moved immediately, assessing injuries, starting emergency treatment. But it was the back corner that made Ben's knees weak. Freshly disturbed earth. A cadaver dog alerted. Police started digging. 7 bodies. 7 dogs who hadn't survived Marcus's training. Some showed signs of blunt force trauma. Others had been shot. All of them had died badly. Marcus was arrested on sight. He showed no remorse as they cuffed him, just cold fury. "I was making them strong," he said, "teaching them to survive. The weak ones didn't deserve to live." Ben wanted to hit him. His fists clenched, 30 years of buried rage surfacing. Sarah grabbed his arm, held tight. "He's not worth it, Dad." The national news picked up the story by 8 p.m. War hero dog exposes dog fighting ring. Marcus Thornton's face was everywhere, his crimes detailed, his excuses analyzed and found wanting. The other 9 dogs were rescued. Donations poured in for their care. Ben should have felt triumphant. Justice served, bad guy caught, dogs saved. Instead, he felt hollow. 7 dogs dead. How many others over the years? How many Thorntons were out there right now in other towns doing the same thing? They returned to the hospital after midnight. Ranger was waiting, and the moment he saw Ben, something was wrong. The dog was trembling, pressed into the back corner of his cage, eyes wide with terror. Emily was already there, trying to calm him. "What happened?" Ben asked. "The news coverage," Emily said grimly. "We had the TV on in the break room. He saw Marcus's photo. Full PTSD response, panic, hyperventilation, complete regression." Ben opened the cage carefully. Ranger tried to make himself smaller, whimpering. "Hey, buddy. Hey, it's okay. He can't hurt you anymore." But Ranger wouldn't respond, wouldn't eat, wouldn't make eye contact. For 3 days he stayed curled in that corner, shaking whenever anyone approached. The physical therapy stopped. The progress they'd made vanished like snow in sunlight. "We might have pushed too hard, too fast," Lisa said on day 4 of the setback. His body was healing, but his mind wasn't ready to face his trauma. "What do we do?" Ben asked. "Time, patience, and something he can hold on to." Lisa paused. "Mr. Carter, does Ranger have anything from his past? Anything that might comfort him?" Ben thought about Sergeant David Mitchell, Ranger's handler, killed in Afghanistan 4 years ago. "We could try to find something of David's, something with his scent." It took Michael 3 days of calls to track down David's belongings. The Marine had been an orphan, no family to claim his effects. Everything had gone to military storage. Michael pulled strings, called in favors, finally got a box shipped overnight. Inside, David's dog tags, a photo of him and Ranger in the desert, and a worn bandana the handler had apparently tied around Ranger's neck during missions. Ben brought the bandana to Ranger's cage. The dog's nostrils flared when he caught the scent. His whole body went rigid, then started shaking harder. Ben's heart sank. Wrong choice, wrong approach. They'd made it worse. Then Ranger moved. Slowly, painfully, he crawled forward and pressed his nose against the bandana in Ben's hand. A sound came from deep in his chest, something between a whimper and a keen. Grief. Pure, raw grief for the handler he'd lost. Ben sat on the floor and let Ranger cry. Because that's what it was. Crying. The dog pushed his head into Ben's lap, the bandana pressed between them, and made sounds Ben had never heard a dog make. Sounds of loss and loneliness and a broken heart that had never been allowed to heal. Sarah, watching from the doorway, started crying too. Emily turned away, wiping her eyes. Even the nurses who'd seen everything had tears streaming down their faces. For 20 minutes, Ranger mourned. Then, slowly, he lifted his head and looked at Ben. Really looked at him. And Ben understood. Ranger wasn't choosing him over David. He was letting David go so he could choose life. "It's okay," Ben whispered. "You can let him go. He'd want you to be happy." Ranger licked Ben's hand. Once, twice. Then he stood up on his own, shaky, uncertain, but standing, and took 3 steps to lean against Ben's chest. The next morning, Ranger ate breakfast. The morning after that, he went back to physical therapy. The breakthrough had happened not through forgetting his trauma, but through acknowledging it, grieving it, and choosing to move forward anyway. On day 60, a Monday in March, Ben collapsed. He'd been visiting Ranger, talking about nothing important, when pain exploded in his chest. The world tilted. His knees hit the floor. The last thing he heard was Ranger barking, frantic, desperate, the first real bark he'd made since the highway. Then darkness. Ben woke in a hospital bed on the human side of the building. Sarah sat beside him, her face pale. A doctor stood at the foot of the bed, chart in hand, expression grave. "Mr. Carter, you've had a major heart attack. 40% of your heart muscle is damaged. You're lucky to be alive." The next days blurred together. Tests, medications, doctors telling him he needed rest, needed to stop pushing himself, needed to understand that stress and exhaustion and carrying the weight of the world had nearly killed him. 6 weeks minimum hospital recovery, his cardiologist said, then 6 months of home rest. And, Mr. Carter, you cannot live alone during recovery. You'll need full-time care. Sarah squeezed his hand. I'm moving back, Dad. My apartment lease is up anyway. I'll stay with you. But that left the question no one wanted to ask. What about Ranger? He's ready to be released, Emily said gently. He can walk, run short distances, is eating normally. He needs a home. I can't take him, Sarah said. I work 50 hours a week. It wouldn't be fair. I can foster him, Emily offered. Temporarily, until your father recovers. 6 months. That was temporary. But both she and Ben knew the truth. 6 months was long enough for a dog to bond to a new person. Long enough that separating them again would be cruel. Ben looked at Sarah. Give us a minute. When they were alone, Ben said, Take him. Keep him. He deserves better than a broken old man who can barely take care of himself. Dad, no. He's yours. I can't give him what he needs. I saved him, but I can't keep him. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's enough. Sarah was crying again. It's not fair. After everything. Life's not fair, sweetheart. Your mama taught me that. But we do the best we can anyway. The decision was made. Ranger would go to Emily's house. Ben would recover. And once again, Ben would lose something he loved because his body wouldn't cooperate. Because life was cruel. Because he was 58 years old and used up. Ranger was brought to Ben's hospital room to say goodbye. The dog knew something was wrong. He pressed against the bed, whining softly, looking between Ben and the door like he was trying to figure out why they were leaving each other. You're going to be okay, Ben told him, voice breaking. Emily will take good care of you. Better than I could. But Ranger didn't move. He stayed pressed against that bed, refusing to leave, as if he understood that once he walked out that door, everything would change again. And dogs like Ranger, dogs who'd lost their handler once already, knew better than anyone that change meant loss. Marcus Thornton's trial was scheduled for the following week. Ben would testify from his hospital bed via video link. But even that felt hollow now. Justice didn't undo damage. It just made sure the guilty paid. The innocent stayed broken anyway. Sarah stayed with Ben that night, sleeping in the chair beside his bed. At 3 a.m., Ben woke to find her staring at her phone, tears streaming down her face. Sarah? She looked up. I was reading about Ranger and David, about military dogs and their handlers. Did you know? Her voice caught. Did you know that when a handler dies, the dog isn't told? They just disappear. The dog waits and wonders and never understands why their person never came back. Sarah, Ranger waited for David. For months, probably. And when he finally got adopted, it was by a monster who tortured him. And now he's bonded to you and you're sending him away again. She wiped her eyes roughly. How many times does he have to lose someone before we get it right? Ben didn't have an answer. He didn't have anything anymore except a broken heart, the literal and figurative kind, and a daughter who'd come home and a dog he couldn't keep. Outside, snow fell over Missoula, covering everything in white. Fresh start. Clean slate. All the metaphors that didn't change the fact that underneath the ground was still frozen solid and nothing could grow there yet. But maybe that was okay. Maybe winter had to run its course before spring could come. Maybe you had to lose everything before you could figure out what was worth keeping. Ben closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more bad news, more impossible decisions. Tonight, he just wanted to rest. In the recovery room on the other side of the building, Ranger lay in his cage with David's bandana under his head, waiting for morning and whatever came next. He'd learned to be patient. He'd learned to survive. He'd learned that sometimes the people you love leave and never come back. But he hadn't learned how to stop hoping. That was the curse of dogs. They never stopped believing that this time maybe their person would stay. The video link for Marcus Thornton's hearing connected at 9 a.m. Ben sat propped up in his hospital bed, Sarah beside him, watching the courtroom appear on a laptop screen. Marcus stood in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, face impassive. His lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit, shuffled papers at the defense table. The charges were read: 9 counts of animal cruelty, 7 counts of animal murder. Yes, Montana had passed a law making it murder, not just abuse. And federal charges for dogfighting. Marcus faced 5 to 10 years. Ben expected Marcus to plead guilty. The evidence was overwhelming. The dogs, the bodies, the videos Michael had captured. But the lawyer stood and said something that made the courtroom go silent. "Your Honor, we're entering an insanity plea. My client suffers from severe PTSD stemming from military service." Ben's stomach dropped. He wasn't military. He was a cop. But the lawyer was already presenting documents, military records, service jacket, and there, in black and white, Marcus Thornton, K-9 handler, United States Marine Corps, 2008 to 2013. "My client's K-9 partner was killed in action," the lawyer continued. "The dog took a bullet meant for Officer Thornton. He spent the last 12 years suffering from survivor's guilt and PTSD, attempting to create dogs who could survive what his partner couldn't." Sarah grabbed Ben's hand. On screen, the prosecutor objected, but the judge allowed the evidence. Marcus's military records painted a picture of a decorated handler whose life fell apart after his dog died. Medical records showed diagnosed PTSD, depression, anxiety, treatment attempts, medications that didn't work. A slow spiral into obsession. The kicker came when the lawyer presented a photo. Marcus, in desert fatigues, kneeling beside a German shepherd. The dog's name on his vest, Duke. Ben's vision blurred. The same name, the same breed. Marcus hadn't just been any handler. He'd been Duke's handler. And when Duke died, something in Marcus had broken beyond repair. "My client loved his dog," the lawyer said. "Everything he did, every terrible choice he made came from a twisted desire to ensure no other dog would die the way Duke did. He's sick, Your Honor. He needs treatment, not prison." The judge called a recess. Ben sat in stunned silence, processing what he'd heard. Sarah looked at him, confused. "Dad? What does this mean?" "It means Marcus wasn't just evil," Ben said slowly. "He was broken. Like me. Like Ranger. Like all of us. That doesn't excuse what he did. No. But it explains it." Ben thought about the dog he'd killed 30 years ago, the rage and alcohol that had turned him into someone he didn't recognize. Hurt people hurt people. Sometimes we hurt the things we're trying to save. The hearing resumed after lunch. The prosecutor presented evidence of premeditation, of Marcus's deliberate choices, of opportunities to get help that he'd refused. Witness after witness testified to the systematic nature of the abuse. This wasn't PTSD acting impulsively. This was calculated cruelty. The judge took 2 hours to deliberate. When he returned, his face was carved from stone. "Mr. Thornton, I've reviewed all evidence. While I acknowledge your military service and your PTSD, I cannot ignore the systematic, deliberate nature of your crimes. You had 12 years to seek help. Instead, You chose to inflict suffering on innocent animals. PTSD is not a license to torture. Marcus's face remained blank. You're sentenced to 5 years in prison, followed by mandatory psychiatric treatment. You're banned from owning, training, or being in contact with animals for life. You'll pay $100,000 in restitution to animal welfare organizations. The gavel came down. Marcus was led away. He looked at the camera once before leaving the courtroom, and Ben saw it. Not malice, but emptiness. A man who'd tried to fix something inside himself by breaking everything around him. Ben closed the laptop. His chest hurt, but it wasn't his heart this time. It was something else. Some deep understanding that everyone in this story was damaged goods, trying to survive the best way they knew how. Marcus just happened to choose the worst way possible. "Dad," Sarah said softly. "You're crying." Ben touched his face. She was right. I feel sorry for him. After what he did to Ranger. I feel sorry for all of us. For Duke dying, for David dying, for Ranger being tortured, for Marcus breaking, for me killing that dog 30 years ago. He looked at his daughter. We're all just trying to survive our grief, sweetheart. Most of us do it badly. That afternoon, a town hall meeting convened in Missoula. Michael had been promoting it for days. A community discussion about Ben's recovery and Ranger's future. 200 people showed up. Ben watched via video link from his hospital room. The mayor spoke first. Benjamin Carter stopped when 47 others didn't. He spent everything he had to save a dog who served our country. Now he needs help. What are we going to do about it? The response was immediate and overwhelming. A contractor stood. The old fire station on 3rd Street is empty. We could convert it to a recovery center, accessible, equipped for both Mr. Carter and Ranger. A doctor. I'll donate my time for house calls. A physical therapist. I'll work with both of them, no charge. Someone started a fundraising campaign. Within 2 hours, they had $40,000 pledged. Volunteers signed up for 24-hour care rotations. Local businesses donated furniture, medical equipment, groceries. Emily stood and proposed something that made Ben's throat close. I need a hospital administrator. Part-time initially, managing our volunteer rescue programs, coordinating cases. The job comes with one requirement. Ranger serves as our facility therapy dog. The room erupted in applause. Sarah squeezed Ben's hand so hard it hurt. They're giving us a way to stay together, she whispered. The renovation began immediately. Contractors worked around the clock. The old fire station transformed into a fully accessible apartment with space for recovery equipment, a room for overnight volunteers, and a yard for Ranger. Ben watched updates daily from his hospital bed, overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers who'd become family. Missoula wrapped around them like a warm blanket, refusing to let them fall through the cracks. 2 weeks later, Emily came to Ben's room with news that changed everything. She sat down heavily, looking older than her 42 years. Mr. Carter, I need to tell you something about me, about 30 years ago. Ben's heart rate spiked on the monitor. He knew what was coming. I was 12 years old, Emily said. My father was a veterinarian here in Missoula. One night, a man brought in a dog, said it was aggressive, needed to be put down. My father examined the dog and refused. The dog wasn't aggressive, it was terrified. Ben's hands started shaking. The man got angry, took the dog outside. My father tried to stop him, but Emily's voice broke. He killed that dog in our parking lot, beat it to death. I watched from the window. I saw everything. Emily, my father was never the same after that night. He blamed himself for not calling the police, for not fighting harder. He started drinking. 5 years later, he died from cirrhosis. Emily finally looked at Ben. The man's name was Benjamin Carter. The room spun. Ben couldn't breathe. You knew. This whole time you knew it was me. I recognized your name when you brought Ranger in. Part of me wanted to refuse treatment, to let you feel what it's like to lose something you love. Emily wiped her eyes. But then I saw how you looked at him. The guilt in your eyes. The desperation. You weren't that man anymore. I'm so sorry. God, Emily, I'm so sorry. I know. And watching you with Ranger, seeing you spend everything, sacrifice everything, nearly die for him, it healed something in me I didn't know was broken. Emily stood. My father didn't fail that dog. You did. But you're not failing Ranger. And in saving Ranger, you've helped me forgive my father. He did his best. Sometimes best isn't enough, but it's still worth doing. She left. Ben sat in stunned silence, 30 years of guilt settling differently in his chest, not lighter, but maybe, finally, acknowledged. Maybe that's what forgiveness looked like, not forgetting, not even fully absolving, but seeing the whole person instead of just their worst moment. Sarah came in an hour later. Dad, I have news too. Her face held something Ben hadn't seen in years. Hope. I've decided to adopt, Sarah said, a child. I can't have biological kids, but I can still be a mom. I'm moving back to Missoula permanently. And Dad, she smiled through tears. Ranger taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you when you're broken. Ben pulled his daughter into his arms and cried, for Mary, for the grandchild he'd never have biologically, but would love anyway, for second chances and small miracles and communities that refuse to let good people fall. Outside, spring was coming to Montana. The snow was melting, and somewhere in the hospital, a German shepherd with a scarred muzzle was learning to hope again. The old fire station renovation finished on April 1st, 3 weeks after Ben's heart attack. Sarah drove him from the hospital in the rental car she'd been living out of, boxes of her Seattle life crammed in the back seat. She'd given up her apartment, quit her job, burned every bridge back to Washington. Coming home wasn't temporary. It was permanent. Ben barely recognized the building. The garage bay where fire trucks once sat had been converted into an open living space with wide doorways for wheelchair access. Hardwood floors, gentle ramps instead of steps, grab bars in the bathroom. The old chief's office was now Ben's bedroom, first floor so he wouldn't need stairs his damaged heart couldn't handle. But the backyard made him stop and stare. Someone had built a fence, planted grass that was just starting to green with spring. A covered porch held 2 rocking chairs. And in the corner, a dog house painted to match the building with Ranger carved above the door. Emily was waiting inside with Ranger. The dog had been released from medical care a week ago, staying at Emily's house while the center was finished. When he saw Ben, he didn't run. Still learning that running was safe, that joy wouldn't be punished. But his whole body wiggled with excitement, tail wagging so hard his back end swayed. Ben knelt carefully. His heart couldn't take sudden movements, and Ranger pressed against him, solid, real, alive. For a moment they stayed like that, man and dog, both of them scarred and healing and grateful to be in the same space. "Welcome home," Emily said. Home. Ben tested the word in his mouth. He'd lived in the cabin with Mary, but after she died it had been just a house. 4 walls and memories that hurt. This place, with its fresh paint smell and donated furniture and wheelchair ramp, felt like something different, something earned. The first week was an adjustment. Volunteers rotated through on 12-hour shifts. Retired nurses checking Ben's vitals 3 times daily. Physical therapists arriving for afternoon sessions with both Ben and Ranger. Neighbors dropping off casseroles and staying to chat. Ben, who'd spent 2 years talking to no one, suddenly couldn't get a moment alone. Sarah moved into the upstairs apartment, converted from the old sleeping quarters where firefighters used to bunk. Close enough to help, far enough to give Ben space. She was interviewing for remote graphic design work, something she could do from home while waiting for her adoption application to process. The daily routine fell into place. Mornings, Ben woke at 6. Old Army habits died hard. He'd make coffee, take his medications, and sit on the back porch watching Ranger patrol the yard. The dog was still processing that this space was his, that he could mark territory and dig holes and bark at squirrels without punishment. Some mornings Ben found him sleeping in the doghouse, other mornings pressed against Ben's bedroom door, still deciding where he belonged. Breakfast at 7. Ben would eat first, then feed Ranger, who still wouldn't touch food unless Ben demonstrated it was safe. Small rituals of trust building, moment by moment. Physical therapy started at 9. A therapist named Margaret, 65 and built like a tank, worked with Ben on gentle cardiac exercises. Walking the hallway, arm raises, breathing techniques. Nothing strenuous, but after a heart attack, everything felt strenuous. Ben's body, which had carried him through 20 years of Army service, now struggled with a flight of stairs. Ranger's therapy happened simultaneously. Lisa Chen would arrive with her underwater treadmill equipment, setting it up in the garage bay. Ben could watch from his chair as Ranger built strength and endurance. Some days were good. Ranger would walk steadily, his gait improving. Other days were hard, old pain flaring, fear responses triggering, progress sliding backward. But they were doing it together. That mattered. Afternoons, Emily would pick them up for work at the hospital. Ben's new job as volunteer coordinator was part-time, mostly administrative. He'd review applications from people wanting to foster rescue animals, coordinate with local shelters, manage the donation funds that had ballooned to over $90,000. Ranger came too, wearing a therapy dog vest Emily had custom-made, visiting patients in the waiting room. Ben watched something bloom in Ranger during those hospital visits. A child, scared of surgery, would bury their face in Ranger's fur and stop crying. An elderly woman grieving a recent diagnosis would sit with Ranger for an hour, petting him, talking to him, finding comfort in his steady presence. Veterans dealing with PTSD would see Ranger's service vest and understand here was someone who got it, who'd seen combat, who carried scars but kept going anyway. Ranger was good at the work. Better than good. He had a sense for who needed him most. He'd bypass cheerful, healthy people and go straight to whoever was hurting worst. The kid crying in the corner, the man with shaking hands, the woman who wouldn't make eye contact. Ranger would sit beside them, lean his weight against their leg, and wait. Just be present. "He's a natural," Emily said one day, watching Ranger comfort a teenage girl whose dog had just died. This is what he was meant to do. Ben thought about Duke, Marcus's dog who died protecting his handler. About David, Ranger's handler who died in Afghanistan. About all the ways Ranger had been trained and broken and rebuilt. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe some dogs were born protectors, and even torture couldn't destroy that instinct. It just redirected it, buried it, waited for safety to bring it back out. Evenings, Ben and Sarah would have dinner together. She'd cook, learning recipes from YouTube, nothing fancy but edible. They'd talk about her adoption application, his latest EKG results, whatever funny thing happened at the hospital. Small talk, but underneath it, healing. 2 years of distance closing one meal at a time. Ranger would lie between them, head on Ben's foot, watching their faces. Dogs understood tone more than words. He knew when conversations were happy, when they turned sad. If Sarah cried, and she still did, grief for Mary coming in waves, Ranger would go to her. If Ben's breathing changed, heart rate spiking from stress, Ranger would press against his leg until it slowed. "He's taking care of us," Sarah said one night. "Yeah," Ben agreed. "I think he is." 6 weeks into recovery, Ben's cardiologist cleared him for light activity. No running, no lifting heavy objects, but walking was encouraged. That evening, Ben took Ranger for their first real walk alone. Just around the block, but it felt monumental. They moved slowly. Ben's pace limited by his healing heart, Ranger's by his rebuilt legs. 2 broken creatures limping along together. When they reached the corner, Ben had to stop and rest. Ranger sat beside him, patient, waiting. "We're a pair, aren't we?" Ben said. Ranger looked at him with those amber eyes, intelligent and knowing. If dogs could speak, Ben thought Ranger would say, "We always were." 8 weeks in, Sarah got the call. A birth mother had chosen her application. Baby girl due in December. Would Sarah be interested? She said yes before the social worker finished the question. That night they celebrated with ice cream and champagne. Ben's doctor had okayed 1 glass for special occasions. Sarah cried happy tears this time. "I'm going to be a mom, Dad. I'm actually going to be a mom. Your mama would be so proud. What should I name her?" Ben didn't hesitate. "Mary. Mary Grace." Sarah nodded, crying harder. "Mary Grace Carter. Perfect." Ranger seemed to sense the joy. He brought them his favorite toy, a rubber ball someone had donated, and dropped it at Sarah's feet. First time he'd ever initiated play. Sarah threw it gently, and Ranger bounded after it, his gait uneven but enthusiastic. He brought it back. She threw it again. They played for 20 minutes, the 3 of them, in the backyard under a Montana spring sky. Ben watched his daughter laugh, watched Ranger run, and felt something he'd forgotten existed. Happiness. Simple, uncomplicated, just for this moment. Happiness. 3 months after moving in, Emily came to Ben with an official proposal. The volunteer coordinator position would become permanent, part-time with benefits. 18 hours a week, scheduling around his recovery needs. Ranger's therapy dog work would expand. Schools, nursing homes, the VA hospital. "You're good at this," Emily said. "Both of you. The program's grown because of you. We've placed 42 rescue animals in the last 3 months. That's more than we did all last year. I'm not doing anything special. You're showing up. You're caring. You're proving that broken things can heal if someone gives them a chance." Emily smiled. "You're doing what you should have been doing all along." Ben thought about that. The last 30 years spent running from guilt, buried in grief, disconnected from everything. And now, at 58, starting over, learning that it was never too late to choose differently. He took the job. By month 4, Ben could walk a mile without stopping. His heart had healed as much as it would. 40% function loss was permanent, but 60% was enough. He'd never run marathons. He'd never carry heavy loads. But he could live, really live, not just exist, not just... Ranger could run full speed again. His limp was barely noticeable except when he was tired. The scars would always be there, on his body, in his mind. But they weren't defining him anymore. He was Ranger, therapy dog, protector, friend. The past informed him, but didn't control him. One evening in July, Ben and Emily were closing up the hospital together. Ranger dozed in his bed behind the reception desk, exhausted from a day of visits. The summer sun cast long shadows through the windows. "Emily," Ben said, "thank you for saving him, for giving me a job, for forgiving me." "I haven't fully forgiven you," Emily said honestly. "I'm not sure I can. But I've made peace with it. There's a difference." "I'll take peace." "Ben, can I ask you something? Why did you stop that night on Highway 93? 47 cars didn't. What made you different?" Ben had thought about this question a lot. It was the anniversary of Mary's death. Same road, same time. I was driving past the spot where she died, thinking about all the ways I'd failed her. Failed everyone. He paused. When I saw Ranger, I saw a chance to not fail. Just once. To do something right. To save something instead of destroying it. "You did more than save him. You saved yourself." "No," Ben said. "We saved each other." As summer deepened, they settled into permanence. This wasn't temporary anymore. This was life. The recovery center became a fixture in the neighborhood. Kids would stop by to play with Ranger. Elderly neighbors would visit for coffee and conversation. The GoFundMe money funded renovations to create a second apartment upstairs, housing for temporary rescue fosters transitioning to permanent homes. Sarah's belly started to show. 5 months pregnant with Mary Grace, due in December. She'd converted the third bedroom into a nursery, painting it soft yellow, hanging curtains with ducks on them. Ben helped when his heart allowed, mostly by sitting in the rocking chair and offering suggestions. "You think Ranger will be okay with a baby?" Sarah asked. "He'll be great," Ben said, and he believed it. Ranger, who'd been trained for protection and twisted into violence, but remained gentle at his core. Ranger, who'd survived torture and chosen forgiveness. Ranger, who somehow knew exactly who needed him most. Yeah, he'd be great with a baby. One afternoon, Michael showed up with news. His documentary about Ranger was finished. 28 minutes, professionally edited, scored with original music. It had been accepted to the Missoula Film Festival. They watched it together in the hospital break room. Michael had woven the story beautifully. The 47 cars, Ben's stop, the surgery, Marcus's arrest, the recovery center. He'd interviewed Lisa about Ranger's military service, Emily about the medical challenges, Sarah about coming home. And he'd gotten footage of Ranger working as a therapy dog, the way children's faces lit up when they saw him, the way veterans' hands steadied when they touched his fur. The film ended with Ben and Ranger walking together at sunset, 2 silhouettes limping along in sync. Voiceover from Ben. "They say a dog is man's best friend, but Ranger was more than that. He was my second chance, my redemption. My teacher. And he taught me that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to do better. It's never too late to save something, even if that something is yourself." Emily was crying. Sarah was crying. Even Michael looked misty-eyed behind the camera. "It premieres next month," Michael said. "And Dad," I've already got interest from streaming platforms. This story matters to people." Ben looked at Ranger, sleeping peacefully in a patch of sunlight. "As long as it helps other dogs, I don't care where it plays." The documentary went viral before it even premiered. Michael posted the trailer online, and it hit 1 million views in 3 days. News outlets picked it up. Good Morning America wanted an interview. The Ellen DeGeneres Show called. Ben said no to all of it. This wasn't about fame. This was about a dog who deserved privacy, dignity, and peace. They'd been through enough. Let the story speak for itself. But he did agree to one thing: a fundraiser screening at the Missoula Film Festival, with proceeds going to animal rescue organizations. The theater sold out in 2 hours. They added a second showing. That sold out too. On premiere night, Ben wore his old dress uniform, the one from his Army retirement ceremony, altered to fit his thinner frame. Sarah wore a blue dress that accommodated her growing belly. Ranger wore his therapy dog vest and a bow tie Emily had made him. They walked the red carpet. Literally, the festival had rolled one out, to applause. Cameras flashed, people cheered. Ranger took it all in stride, tail wagging, pressing close to Ben, but not frightened. This was his life now. Attention, kindness, safety. The documentary played. Ben watched his lowest moment projected on a giant screen, watched himself collapse with chest pain, watched Ranger's fear and pain and slow healing, watched Sarah's confession about Mary's death. All of it raw and honest and achingly real. When the lights came up, the entire theater stood in ovation. Ben looked down the row, Emily crying again, Sarah beaming, Michael grinning, Ranger looking confused by all the noise but trusting it was okay. This was his family now. Not the one he was born into, but the one he'd built from broken pieces. After the screening, a woman approached, elderly, using a walker, but her eyes were sharp. "Mr. Carter, I'm Margaret Chen, Lisa's mother." Ben shook her hand. "It's an honor. Lisa speaks highly of you." "I wanted to meet the man who saved David's dog." Margaret's voice shook. "David was my grandson. I loved him like a son. When he died, and then Ranger disappeared into the system." She couldn't finish. Ben understood. "He's safe now, and I hope, he's happy." Margaret knelt slowly, painfully, and Ranger came to her. She touched his face, tears streaming. "You look so much better than the last time I saw you, before David deployed. You were both so young." Ranger licked her hand, gentle, patient, remembering, maybe, or just responding to grief he recognized. They stayed like that for several minutes. Then Margaret stood, thanked Ben, and left. Another ghost laid to rest, another connection honored. The fundraiser raised $70,000. Combined with what remained from the GoFundMe, they had enough to expand the rescue program statewide. Emily would hire 2 more vets. Lisa would expand the rehab facility, and Ben would coordinate it all. From one dog on a highway to an entire program saving hundreds. From 47 cars passing by to a community that refused to look away. Driving home that night, Sarah in the passenger seat and Ranger in the back, Ben felt something settle in his chest. Not happiness exactly, more like peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you've done something right, something that matters, something that will outlast you. "Dad," Sarah said, "are you okay?" Ben looked at her, at the life growing inside her, at Ranger in the rearview mirror. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think I finally am." October came to Montana in gold and amber, the aspens turning the mountains into flames of color. 6 months since that January night on Highway 93. 6 months since Ben stopped and 47 others didn't. They drove to the trailhead in Emily's SUV, Ben and Ranger in the back seat, Sarah navigating from the front, Michael filming from the cargo area. Sarah was 7 months pregnant now, moving carefully, one hand always on her belly where Mary Grace was growing. Emily had taken the day off from the hospital. Some moments were too important to miss. The meadow sat at the base of the Bitterroot Mountains, accessible by a gentle trail Ben's recovering heart could handle. Ranger ran ahead, then circled back, checking on them, making sure his pack stayed together. His limp was barely noticeable now. His coat shone in the October sun. He'd gained back the weight he'd lost, filled out to a healthy 85 pounds of muscle and confidence. They spread a blanket on the grass and ate sandwiches. Ranger flopped beside Ben, panting happily, tongue lolling. A year ago he'd been crawling through snow with broken legs. Now he could run full speed, jump over logs, live without fear. "I've been thinking about something," Ben said, watching Ranger. "They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But that's not what Ranger taught me." "What did he teach you?" Sarah asked. "That it's never too late to change, to heal, to become who you were always meant to be." Ben scratched behind Ranger's ears. He was born to protect and serve. Marcus tried to twist that into violence, but he couldn't destroy what Ranger really was. And now look at him, therapy dog, visiting kids and veterans and anyone who hurts. He found his purpose again. Michael kept filming. This was the ending for the documentary's sequel, the one tracking their first 6 months of recovery. "Tell them what you've accomplished," Michael prompted. Ben shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "The rescue program's placed over 200 animals this year. We've got volunteers in 5 cities now. Montana passed stricter animal cruelty laws, Ranger's Law, they're calling it. The recovery center's permanent, helping other families going through what we went through." "And personally?" Emily asked. Ben looked at Sarah, at her swollen belly, at the life about to join them. "I'm going to be a grandfather. Sarah's healed. We've healed together. I've got a job I love, work that matters, friends." He glanced at Emily, and something passed between them. Not romance exactly, but possibility. Time would tell. "I've got Ranger, and I've got peace. After 2 years of nothing but grief, I've finally got peace." Ranger lifted his head and licked Ben's hand. Just once, deliberate. A dog's way of saying, "I know, me too." They packed up as the sun started lowering. But first, one more stop. The Western Montana Veteran Cemetery sat on a hillside overlooking Missoula. Row after row of white headstones, each marking a life given in service. They found David Mitchell's grave easily. Ranger led them straight to it, like he'd been there before in dreams. The headstone read, "SGT David Mitchell, USMC, 1996-2021, beloved son and Marine." Below that, his K9 partner Duke awaits him. "Duke," Ben said softly. "That's what they called you, wasn't it, boy?" Ranger sat beside the grave, calm and peaceful. No longer grieving, just remembering. Sarah placed flowers, white roses, at the base of the stone. Ben knelt, his heart protesting but holding. "David," Ben said, "I'm taking care of your boy. He's safe now. He's home. He saved 47 lives with you in the war. He saved one more after. He saved me." Ranger stood, looked at the grave one final time. Then he turned and looked at Ben. It was a choice, clear as day. Past or future, grief or life, David or Ben. Ranger chose Ben. They walked back to the parking lot together. Ranger ranging ahead on the trail, exploring, living. When he got too far, he'd stop and look back, waiting for Ben to catch up, patient, loyal, trusting that his person would always follow. "Go ahead, boy," Ben called. "I'm coming." Ranger's tail wagged and he bounded forward, disappearing around a bend. Ben followed at his own pace, Sarah beside him, Emily just behind, Michael capturing it all. The autumn sun filtered through golden leaves, painting everything in warm light. Ben's chest didn't hurt. His heart, the literal and figurative one, felt strong, not healed completely. Some damage was permanent, but functional. Good enough? Better than good enough. They reached the parking lot to find Ranger waiting by the SUV, tongue out, grinning that goofy dog grin that meant pure joy. When Ben approached, Ranger pressed against his leg. Solid, real. Here. "Ready to go home?" Ben asked. Ranger's tail thumped against the car. Home. That word had changed meaning. It wasn't a place anymore. It was people. It was this dog, this daughter, this cobbled-together family built from broken pieces. It was purpose and peace and second chances. They drove back to Missoula as the sun set, painting the mountains purple and gold. Ranger slept in the back seat, his head on Ben's lap. Sarah dozed against the window, one hand on her belly. Emily hummed along to the radio. Michael reviewed his footage, already editing in his head. In 2 months, Mary Grace would be born. In 3, Ranger would start visiting schools full-time, teaching kids about service and loyalty and resilience. In 6, Emily and Ben would have their first official date. Dinner at the Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, just 2 scarred people taking a chance on something new. But tonight, driving through the October dusk with a sleeping dog and a growing family, Ben didn't think about the future. He thought about January 15th, 6:30 p.m., Highway 93 North, 47 cars. One decision. Everything that followed. They say a dog is man's best friend, Ben whispered, more to himself than anyone else. But Ranger was more than that. He was my second chance, my redemption, my way back to living. Ranger stirred in his sleep, pressed closer. And maybe I was his too. Outside, the first stars appeared. Inside, everyone Ben loved was safe and whole and heading home. It wasn't perfect. Scars remained. Pain lingered. Some wounds never fully healed. But they were okay. Against all odds, against 47 cars that didn't stop, against torture and heart attacks and 30 years of guilt, they were okay. Ben closed his eyes and smiled. For the first time in years, he looked forward to tomorrow. Sometimes we think our story's already written, that the best chapters are behind us, that we've missed too many chances, that broken things can't be whole again. Ben believed that for 2 years after Mary died. He'd given up on mattering, on connecting, on living instead of just existing. Then 47 cars passed by a dying dog, and Ben was number 48. One decision changed everything, not just for Ranger, but for himself, for Sarah, for an entire community. The truth is, it's never too late to start over. You're not too old to find purpose. Your mistakes don't define your ending. Whether it's a dog that needs saving, a relationship that needs mending, or a dream you've set aside, there's still time. Ben was 58 with a broken heart, literally and figuratively, and he built a whole new life. Ranger had been tortured and left to die, and he became a healer. Sarah thought she'd lost everything, and she found family again. Your next chapter is waiting. You just have to be brave enough to stop when others keep driving past. So here's my question. What's your Highway 93 moment? The thing you saw and couldn't ignore? And what's stopping you from being the one who stops? Share your story in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.